Welcome to Matters Financial, Geopolitical from a Frontier. Hope the year's going well. Sure we'll find ourselves at the end of it in no time whatsoever. Let me start off with some macro thoughts. This is from Holger talking about the Trump rally. And you can see the performance of the Dow Jones. And I was talking to somebody else and saying this is a transactional White House. And actually I'm very bullish the Dow Jones. I think we'll see it considerably higher. Notwithstanding what happens with the politics, actually. In January, I wrote about how the Turkish lira has found itself at the epicenter of the Syrian blowback, and interestingly, it actually had a small rebound. It is the worst performing currency in the world at the moment against the dollar. But I'll put up a chart that Bloomberg tweeted. Erdogan was quoted as saying, "A terrorist with a dollar and with a weapon have no difference." That's from Zero Hedge. And the other currency which finds itself at the bleeding edge is the Mexican peso, which is at the bleeding edge of Trump's policies. Some peso traders want Mexico to buy Twitter and shut it down. It goes like this: instead of spending its precious reserves to defend the peso, Mexico should just buy Twitter at a cost of $12 billion and immediately shut it down. The notion made the rounds this week after the central bank revealed it had already blown through $2 billion of reserves in a largely futile effort to shield the peso from its steady stream of anti-Mexico tweets from Donald Trump. Home thoughts, it was a real pleasure yesterday to catch up with a gentleman called Ben Lister-Binns. After more than 30 years, we were at university in Durham together, good friends, lost touch, started seeing each other on Twitter, and he was passing through town yesterday. It was a very, very great pleasure to catch up. Took me back straight off, and we were talking about that, saying you meet people and suddenly you're that person that you were 30 years ago. And I said to him, that's the essence of what we were. I like this notes of Kerouac used in writing on the road. By now you know that is one of my favorite books. And I always quote it in everything I write. January 2013, when we done our normal trip down to the coast, we didn't do it this year. And I wrote, my Christmas holiday ritual is to jump into a car and take the family down to the coast, the Nairobi-Mombasa road, arrows into immensities, and it's impossible to believe. And I was quoting Jack Kerouac writing about this photograph by Robert Frank. In his introduction to The Americans, Kerouac describes this photograph as a long shot of night road, forlorn into immensities and flat of impossible to believe America in New Mexico under the prisoner's moon. Nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever on the road. Werner Twetzel tweeted, if you knew only 1% of what has happened, you would lie upon the ground and howl in grief and shame, and still would do nothing. And then I couldn't resist this. These are the world's cheapest places to buy drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. So things get bad. Indulging in a weekly habit of drugs, booze, and cigarettes can cost you as little as $41.40 in Laos and a whopping $1,441 in Japan, according to the Bloomberg Vice Index. Bloomberg compared the price of a basket of goods, tobacco, alcohol, amphetamine, cannabis, cocaine, and opioids in more than 100 countries relative to the US, where your fix of the vices adds up to almost $400, or about a third of the weekly income. And then one last quote, Luke Sante, I do have the immense feeling toward the past. That's the country I come from, MFA Russia, this is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Zakharova. Russia views the deployment of US military in the Baltics as yet another example of provocative military action near our borders. Trump effortlessly pivoted on Russian hacking from saying, yeah, right, to so what? And that's the intercept, which has been extremely partisan, a little bit like WikiLeaks, so that's quite a turnaround. And I said it a couple of days ago, they'd become so advocates of the Russian position. And it was clear, and I was quoting Don DeLillo in that piece I wrote on the 5th of December, when I said, we have a deviator, quoting DeLillo, Tomahawk. The specialist in monitoring data on his mission console, when a voice breaks in, a voice that carried with it a strange and unspecifiable poignancy. He checks in with his flight dynamics and conceptual paradigm officers at Colorado Command. We have a deviate Tomahawk. We copy, there's a voice. We have gross oscillation here. There's some interference. I've gone redundant, but I'm not sure it's helping. We are clearing an outframe to locate source. Thank you, Colorado. It is probably just selective noise. You are negative red on the step function quad. It was a voice, I told them. We have just received an affirm on selective noise. We will correct Tomahawk. In the meantime, advise you to stay redundant. The voice, in contrast to Colorado's metallic pidgin, is a melange of repartee, laughter, and song, with a quality of purest, sweetest sadness. The voice, in contrast to somehow we are picking up signals from radio programs of 40, 50, 60 years ago. I said, I've no doubt that Putin ran a seriously 21st century, predominantly digital program of interference which amplified the Trump candidacy. And I was saying that Trump was an ideal candidate for this kind of support. He's a linguistic warfare specialist, and dialed down Hillary's support. And I said the first thing is plausible deniability, and the second thing is non-linearity. From feeding the hothouse frenzy online, a constant state of destabilized perception, timely and judicious doses of WikiLeaks, which drained Hillary's bona fides and her turnout, and motivated Trump's. What we witnessed is something remarkable and noteworthy. Putin has proved himself an information master, and his adversaries are information victims. And on that point, look at this. The signal from Russian TV interrupts the US Congress hearings on C-SPAN. You couldn't make this up, could you? So there you are. We have a deviated Tomahawk. We copy, there's a voice. We have gross oscillation here. I think it was RT. But I sort of said it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. They're now taking the piss. Excuse the language. That quote from Don DeLillo, that passage is from a book called The Angel Esmeralda. It's 9 stories. It's brilliant, as are all of his books. Another quote from that book: we listen to the old radio shows, light flares and spreads across the blue banded edge. Sunrise, sunset, the urban grids in shadow. There is sweetness in the tenor of the voice of the young man singing, a simple vigor with time and distance, and random noise have enveloped in eloquence and yearning. Every sound, every lift of strings has this veneer of age. According to Ian Bremmer, any businessman going to Moscow knows the Ritz-Carlton is ground zero for Kremlin surveillance. Honey traps. He says, I don't buy the allegation on Trump. Now, I got a few friends in the intelligence business, and they're saying there's a file that thick. And furthermore, in my experience, it's Tiger Woods territory, isn't it? It's somebody tells you you're Trump, you're the man. You have your own plane, you're flying everywhere, women are falling at your feet. This kind of behavior, I'm sure, you see people, there's some people who indulge in this risky kind of behavior. Bill Clinton comes to mind. So therefore, I think this is an extraordinary situation, made more extraordinary by, I think, unless the actual tape comes out, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to move the dial. His supporters are going to ignore it. The other side is going to be partisan and supported. But it requires something else. And what that something else is, I suppose we'll discover when it comes out. Put up a photograph of Donald and Ivanka Trump. The former MI6 officer Christopher Steele, who produced Donald Trump's Russian dossier, is now terrified for his safety, according to the Telegraph. London-based Orbis Business Intelligence Limited prepared a 35-page document that alleges the Kremlin colluded with Mr. Trump's presidential campaign and that the Russian security forces have material that could be used to blackmail him, including an allegation that he paid prostitutes to defile a bed that had been slept in by Barack and Michelle Obama. Mr. Trump has branded the allegations in the dossier fake and has said he feels as though he's living in Nazi Germany. Steele, also the author of this dossier, also supplied the FBI with information on corruption at FIFA, international soccer's governing body, which was proved accurate. So basically, this Steele has a number of dangerous enemies: Trump, Putin, Blatter, Danny Jourdan, Thabo Mbeki, says Vessel van Rensburg. Originally, he was hired by Jeb Bush to investigate Trump, according to the BBC. Tillerson's attack on China adds to a febrile atmosphere, says the Financial Times. Rex Tillerson was very forthright. Go and listen to it word for word. Set the stage for a major diplomatic clash between Washington and Beijing after the nominee for US Secretary of State said China should not be allowed access to islands it has built in the South China Sea. At his confirmation hearing before the US Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday, Mr. Tillerson said China's construction of artificial islands in the contested sea was akin to Russia's taking Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. We're going to have to send China a clear signal that first the island building stops and second your access to those islands is not going to be allowed, he said. Over the past 3 years, China has deployed dredgers to create islands out of rocks and reefs in the South China Sea. Mr. Tillerson said any move by Beijing to dictate access to the waterway would be a threat to the entire global economy. Responding on Thursday to Mr. Tillerson's comments, Liu Kang, spokesman at China's foreign ministry, said China has full right to conduct all lawful activities within its own sovereign zone. Asked specifically how China would respond if the US tried to block access to the islands, Mr. Liu said he cannot comment on Mr. Tillerson's personal comments or make a projection on China's policies. We don't answer hypothetical questions. 14th of November, when I was writing about Trump's win, which happened on the 8th, I said to triangulate China, the US needs Russia on its side, not on China's. The pivot to Asia seems to have bared its fangs again. It bared them in 2013, and looks like we're headed back into that scenario. And then I wrote that one of the key elements of the pivot to Asia is the air-sea battle concept. The concept envisages the battle beginning with a blinding attack against Chinese anti-access facilities and incorporates distant blockade operations. So you've got this attack and you've got this blockade. Now, an attack would really be an extremist, right? You'd have to have a real casus belli there, but you could blockade quite easily. China's dependence on foreign oil is increasing, US's dependency is decreasing, and therefore that's the strategy you've got to look at. So therefore, the pivot, in my view, is predominantly about a naval blockade, chokehold across China. FT, interestingly, has got a report, a big in-depth report about Beijing's global power play, how China rules the waves, talking about Pakistan's port of Gwadar, which is perched on the world's energy jugular sea lanes nearby, carrying most of China's oil imports. Any disruption could choke the world's second largest economy. So now you've got this new route across land from Gwadar port. Gwadar becomes more active as a port. Chinese traffic, both commercial and naval, will grow to this region. There are no plans for a permanent Chinese naval base, but the relationship is stretching out to the sea. Gwadar is part of a much bigger ambition to break that naval blockade I was talking about, right? Both commercial and naval, is part of a much bigger ambition driven by President Xi Jinping for China to become a maritime superpower. FT investigation reveals how far Beijing has already come in achieving that objective over the past 6 years. Sri Lanka, Greece, Djibouti, the Horn of Africa, Chinese investment in civilian ports has been followed by deployments or visits of the PLA, Navy vessels, and in some cases announcements of longer-term military contingencies. There is an inherent duality in the facilities that China is establishing in foreign ports, which are ostensibly commercial but quickly upgradable to carry out essential military missions. They are great for the soft projection of hard power. Beijing shipping lines deliver more containers than those from any other country. China's state-run newspaper calls Rex Tillerson's remarks in the South China Sea islands foolish. Israeli jets bombed a Damascus military airport. Syria says it will respond to flagrant attack. And then somebody's tweeted, only in Damascus can you find yourself attacked by Al-Qaeda and Israel 1 hour apart. Euro dollar 106.38, the dollar's been seeing some profit taking. Dollar index 101.43. Dollar yen 114.64. So we're seeing a strengthening yen. Swiss franc 1.0095. The pound all over the place, but now at 121.72. The Australian dollar, where are we there? 0.7493. That's been firming up of late. Indian rupee 68.255. South Korean won 11.7486. That's firmer. Rial untroubled by that big rate cut. It's at 3.1878. Egyptian pound has backed off. It's trading in a very wide range this year. We were as low as 1950 at the back end of last year. We then rallied to 17.99 against the dollar, and we're now at 18.9175. South African rand has had its best start to the year for many a year. That's at 13.5472. I'm bullish about the rand. I think Gordon has sort of brought rogue policy making, which essentially emanates out of the president's office, under control. Tracking Britain's economy through Brexit's twists and turns. Have a look at this chart. Pound volatility jumps as traders brace for May's speech, and every time she speaks, she brings the political risk to the fore of a hard Brexit. The yen's 1 year implied volatility against the dollar, a key component of option prices, rose 54 basis points this week to 12.4%. A level unseen since September 2013. Dollar index, that's been coming off a little bit, but I think we're going to resume a dollar rally in a little while. Let's see how far back we draw down. Gold, now that caught me off guard. It's rallied up. We're at 1196. 1200 so far, repel the advance. I'm not bullish about gold. Javier Blas, interesting, Saudi Arabian oil production drops below 10 million barrels a day, according to its oil minister. But that might well prove a Pyrrhic victory, because US oil output is now roughly at the same level as it was in November 2014, when OPEC declared war on shale. Each tick up, they're going to be pumping more. So I'm not bullish about oil. Last trading at $53.60. My cap for the year is $60. China's awe-inspiring iron imports top 1 billion tons. Amazing, isn't it? Iron ore, of course, the best commodity last year. Sub-Saharan Africa, I wrote a piece for The Economist. It's a section that's sponsored by Standard Chartered, and it's called Growth Crossings. And my piece is Finding Opportunities in Disequilibrium. Times of serious disequilibrium offer outstanding opportunities, but the key to unlocking those opportunities is execution. The world in 2016 was an unputdownable and a white-knuckle ride. The world we find ourselves in the beginning of 2017 feels entirely different to the world we started with in 2016. Who can forget the shockwaves that were the Brexit vote in June, the election of Donald J. Trump in November? The new zeitgeist is a populist one, or is it an old one? The Big Mo is signalling that in 2017, Fortress Europe might find itself in serious peril. Attacks on Europe's streets have become close to an everyday occurrence. This is evidenced in the data. There was a 650% increase in fatal terror attacks on people living in the world's biggest economies in 2015. This is the Global Terrorism Index. And that's what I think, part of the reason that these communities feel so under threat, right? And that is the statistics of it. Plus, migration is at a multi-year high as well. Ahead of Donald J. Trump's inauguration on January 19, the US intelligence community has accused President Putin of running an influence campaign. Moscow's influence campaign followed a Russian messaging strategy that blends covert intelligence operations such as cybersecurity with overt efforts by Russian government agencies, state-funded media, third-party intermediaries, and paid social media users or trolls. The contemporary philosopher Paul Virilio, who I like as much as Dr. Lilo and Thomas Pynchon, considers the real time, and he says this: the message is not exactly in the medium, but above all the ultimate speed of its propagation. And then another coeval emergence of mass media and industrial army, where the capability to war without war manifests a parallel information market of propaganda, illusion, and dissimulation. We are facing the emergence of a real collective madness, reinforced by the synchronization of emotions, the sudden globalization of effects in real time that hits all of humanity at the same time. And in the name of progress, emergency exit, we have entered a time of general panic. Vladislav Surkov, an eminence Greece at the Kremlin, has spoken of a state of constantly destabilized perception. And the international political financial environment sadly feels that way. Concept of speed, velocity, and volatility has infected the markets, where we witnessed unprecedented and extraordinary moves. I refer to the sterling pound moves on the Brexit vote, flash crashes in sterling and the rand, the extraordinary sell-off in the Japanese yen after November the 8th. Price moves are being amplified by algorithmic trading. Bitcoin metastasized into a safe haven and surged 126% in 2016. And the Dow Jones closed in on 20,000 for the first time. Against this international backdrop, the IMF is estimating sub-Saharan African GDP for 2016 at just 1.5%. World Bank is expecting quite a good rebound this year, let's see. The lowest rate of GDP expansion in more than 20 years, and a far cry from the boom between 2010 and 2015 when GDP growth outperformed global rates at an average of 4.4% a year, and the Africa Rising banner was flying high. In fact, GDP of 1.5% is well behind the demographic rate of expansion, signaling Africa is not even standing still, but is getting worse off. Big economies like South Africa, Nigeria, and Angola are in recession or just skirting one. East Africa, who received a significant tailwind from the lower oil price structure, and the likes of Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal have been outperforming, but more is needed. Abebe Ambrose Selassie, the director of the African department of the IMF, says, policy response in many countries affected by these shocks has been delayed and incomplete, and this raises uncertainty and deters private investment and stifles new sources of growth. In a rising tide floats all boats environment, the importance of good policy making is diluted. But now poor policy making is being amplified. The fundamental paradox at the heart of President Buhari's government is the Naira. Investors are sidelined, waiting for the president's moment of epiphany. One senses some folks are watching a Hail Mary pass, the price of crude oil, and if that pass does not come off, then problems are set to be compounded. Monoline commodity producers might find the hard decisions they have delayed might now be forced upon them, unless OPEC's quota taper works, which is unlikely, in my view. In Kenya, the interest rate cap bill has seriously distorted credit transmission, and we have seen a near enough 500 basis point slowdown in private sector credit growth over 12 months. Investors will need to also consider policy-making agility. How quickly will a government reverse its mistakes? Kenya is a good proxy for this reversal. The new president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, is saying all the right things. Ghana looks primed to move from a policy-making haircut to a policy-making premium. South African asset prices have, of course, been battling a Zuma haircut, which began to ebb into year-end. The rand closed the year plus 11% versus the dollar, as investors started to factor in Pravin Gordhan's fight back against rogue policy making. The cause and effect was best witnessed around the time when David Van Rooyen momentarily gain control of the treasury. Policy making is a factor for investors, and in a low-growth environment, it will have an outsized impact on returns. Africa is not a country, has become a popular meme on social media, but it makes an important point about the non-linearity of the continent. However, that non-linearity should not obscure what looks like a significant political trend change. And the LSE for Business, in their report, The Commodity Price Rout in Africa's Unusual Electoral Cycle, said this. It would seem elections in the region are at a tipping point. The traditional incumbent re-election bias is at a historic low, and the ground is fast shifting beneath the feet of the political establishment. What has triggered the turn of the tide? The African demographic dividend has metastasized into a demographic terminator across many parts of sub-Saharan Africa. The first signal was emitted from Ouagadougou with the termination of beautiful Blaise Compaoré in 2014. Since then, President Goodluck in Nigeria and President Mahama in Ghana have exited stage left. President Jammeh of Gambia is also in the departure lounge. Africa being non-linear, we have seen events unfold at the opposite end of the spectrum, for example in Kinshasa, where President Kabila has managed to fend off the pressure from the streets and string things along. Ethiopia, which is very much the sub-Saharan African economic poster child, has had to impose a state of emergency. One senses that we have now entered a period when the demographic bulge is arriving at voting age, and that this moment of enfranchisement is actually a revolutionary one. This is a moment of significant political friction, and ground-level intelligence is going to be at a premium. Counterintuitively, South Africa, with its entrenched institutions, looks significantly less politically risky than many other sub-Saharan African countries. The GDP rate of expansion that was at 20-year lows made it tough going in sub-Saharan African markets. FX ordnance lay scattered all across the landscape, with the Angolan kwanza down 18.96%, Congolese franc down 21.14%, Sierra Leone 27.34% down, the Metical down 33.27%, Nigerian Naira down 36.68%. The South African Rand, after all the fireworks, actually appreciated by 11%. And so did the Kwacha, but that was up 11.96%. These numbers do not factor in the positive carry. Zimbabwe is experimenting with the bond notes, and it is predicted and predictable that they will issue more bond notes than the $200 million Afreximbank facility sometime in 2017, and then we will enter Hunter S. Thompson territory. And that is the age, but there is no honest way to explain it, because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. A currency roadmap is seriously relevant to returns on a purely linguistic analysis basis. I like the Ghana City in 2017. Because I like what the President is saying, I expect further downward adjustments in the Kwanza and the Naira. From a stock market perspective, Namibia came out on top, returning plus 34.13% in 2016. Most equity indices were underwater in that year, unable to fend off $1 billion equivalent withdrawal from frontier funds as an asset class. I finished off by saying, of course, times of serious disequilibrium offer outstanding opportunities, but the key to unlocking these opportunities is execution. I was at a reception last year that Standard Chartered hosted in Nairobi to celebrate the 100 years of operations in Africa. That on-the-ground presence across the continent, coupled with an international reach, makes Standard Chartered an optimal partner for investors as they seek to exploit opportunities across the continent. Bloomberg is saying that the army is Ouattara's Achilles heel as Ivory Coast economy roars, and it's the best performing economy on the continent, bar none. I'll put up a photograph of Abidjan. And then The Economist is saying war, said Karl von Clausewitz, is politics by other means. In Ivory Coast, the country at the heart of Francophone West Africa, so too is mutiny. And then an interesting tweet from Hall about Africa. Top flyer, US Obama has only one presidential jet, but Côte d'Ivoire's President Alassane Ouattara possesses a fleet of 10. Ivory Coast Eurobond was a wonderful investment. that I spoke about in January 2011, did extremely well. Cash is king in Mugabe, Zimbabwe, as dollar supply dries up. Walk into Petsai Nika's furniture factory in Zimbabwe's capital and he'll offer a 20% discount straight away, provided you pay in cash. South African all shares up 3.54%. This year's had a good start. The rand has had a good start, 13.5472. Egyptian pound up and down, but we're back near 19. Nigeria's central bank has told the Bureau de Change operators it does not intend to devalue the naira. And as I said previously, the naira remains the central paradox for the Buhari regime. It has a lot further to fall in 2017. Nigerian all share down 2.03%. Ghana Stock Exchange up 2.35% this year. Mugabe loses his Goblin court case. I'll let you go to that story on Rich Wrap-Up, so you can't make these things up. President Kenyatta had a message delivered to His Excellency Sassou in the Republic of Congo. It was delivered by the Cabinet Secretary Dan Kazungu. I'll put up a photograph. Bondholders insist Mozambique will pay as JP Morgan sees default. Look at what's happened to the bond price. It's collapsed to 50 cents. And just 959 days ago, I was in Maputo for the Africa Rising Conference when Mozambique was the poster child. A great article in The Economist about the sound of politics, Congolese or pop music. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, there are 3 ways to make it big, says Lexus Legal, a rapper, standing in his house in Kinshasa, the capital, underneath a mural of Congo's first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba. First, you can become a politician. Second, you can join the army, but you need to be at the top, a general, not a foot soldier. Finally, you can set up a church. This is what you call having power. He said the musicians in this country are beggars. Kenya, very interesting article at Sputnik. China ramps up railway diplomacy in Africa, seeking power projection. And remember that we were talking about earlier about the maritime power, that article in the FT. Then go and have a look at this railway and think about connecting those dots. And China's encouragement to African countries to sign up to the One Belt, One Road initiative is being ably supported by Beijing's railway diplomacy on the continent, an expression of its military as well as economic potential. As railroads have the largest carrying capacity of all land-based transport, deployment of a railway network means that Chinese military forces from the base in Djibouti can be rapidly relocated to any African country to protect China's economic interests. Put up a photograph of the Mombasa Nairobi Railway, the old one, the RBR one, which seems to be up for sale again. This is just outside the entrance to Savo East, and then another one at the Manyani Gate, and it's an old sign, railway crossing. Kenya's vegetable exports grew 17% to the European Union. That's good news. Kenya shilling stable under 104 at 103.89. Nairobi all share fell again, down 6.44% this year since the start of the year. My God, it's a bear market. It's overdone, but you're catching a falling knife. NSE 20 down 5.39% this year at October 2009 lows. Let's hope we get a bit of a bounce today. Let's see what happens. But we can't be far away from one because it's been falling in a straight line. Once again, thank you for stopping by, and sorry for my long-windedness. Thank you.